Nigel Glockler, how good is it to catch up with you? How are you?
Good, thanks. Not so good with this bloody weather, though. It's a bit cold. Oh, my God. Roll on summer, I say.
Now, it's great to meet you. Thank you so much for your time. I thought it was a really good time to chat, what with the reissues. The reissues, of course, we'll talk about in detail. And of course, many people will know that you've been with SAXON, a heavy metal band, since 1981. I think it was pretty soon after you left Toyah, wasn't it? It was the next band you went with, wasn't it?
Well, that's why I'd come back from, we've been doing some stuff in Germany, I think, that with the Toyah thing, you know, musical art and some of these playback shows and stuff. And SAXON contacted me when I got back and asked me to fill in for Pete Gill because he hurt his hand or something. And so, cut a long story short, I'm still here.
I'm so glad you are. And of course, you're doing great things with SAXON. You know, you've been with them since the early 80s. I think you left for a short time, didn't you? And then you went back to work with them again.
I left twice.
Oh, you did leave twice? Well,
I was having a bit of a, I wasn't very happy with the SAXON management to start with, around 87, I think it was. And I got asked to join a band with Steve Howe from Yes. So I did that for a year, but there was a lot of background politics going on, so that sort of collapsed. And then it was due to that I met Jeff Downes, and so I played on some Asia albums. So it's all worked out, and then they sort of SAXON dragged me back in again.
Amazing.
The second time I left was due to I ripped a muscle between my neck and my shoulder on tour in, I can't remember where, South America, I think it was. So I got told I had to stop playing for about 5 months.
I guess when you're a drummer, though, and the sort of drummer that you are, you don't rest easily. You've got to get back out there and get back on stage again. It must be quite addictive as well, especially if you have all these health problems. It must be so frustrating. I know you've got to look after yourself.
Yeah, I mean, everyone, you can't, you get to a point where you can't burn the candle at both ends.
Yeah.
Some suffer eventually, but I love playing. I do love it,
So we've got to talk about these two reissues.
Sure.
The first one, obviously, Anthem, which came out,
Yeah.
I think it was back in September, wasn't it, of this year? So good to see this kind of repackaged and reissued with extra tracks.
Yeah.
And a really good time, I would imagine, for you as well, because obviously it was for the Toyah band, it was their most successful era, I suppose, wasn't it? I mean, It was quite an exciting time. What do you remember? Do you remember fondly that time?
Oh yeah, I can remember the whole. It was weird because I was doing a session with this guy. I think he was from New Zealand, a guy called Zane Griff, and who was a bit of a Bowie type sort of thing. So I was in the middle of doing rehearsing an album with him. And I was already a Toyah fan anyway.
Oh right,
So I had the Blue Meaning and Sheep Farming in Barnet on cassette in my car. So I was listening to them all the time, when I was driving around doing sessions and stuff. And Zane suddenly said, "Oh, I've got to go to a photographer's place around the corner when we have lunch and stuff because I've got to check some photos out." And I was sitting in there, and Toyah walked in.
Wow.
And me and Zane were talking about the drum tracks, and I noticed out the corner of my eye, her ears pricked up. And the next thing I knew I think it's about 2 days after that, I got contacted by her producer.
Amazing.
And the next thing I know, we're sort of in a studio rehearsing It's a Mystery. It was weird, actually, because we did a tour with us, like a university sort of tour and some civic halls and stuff. And it was great, but it was all the punk thing, Well, it was the sort of later stages of the punk thing. So, the poor guys up the front, like Phil, Joel and Toyah, were getting absolutely covered in, people spitting out. Oh, God, yeah. It was like, I saw one coming from me and I sort of willed it down before it got me, I think. So.
Got to be quite clever, I think, up on stage to see where it's coming from, because I suppose it comes from all angles. It
was just this big one. I just caught it, and I saw this thing and I went, "Get down," and it never made it, thank God.
I was a massive Toyah fan back in the early, 81 was when I first got into the band, and I just loved what Toyah was doing as well. And of course, it wasn't until I saw her the following year, because I didn't see her until 82 on the Warrior Rock tour. Unfortunately, I never saw you play with her live, but obviously I've been a fan of the music.
The strange thing was that once It's a Mystery went in the charts, the audience changed. The gobbers had gone.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, there were a few at the front, but not like the first tour.
So do you reckon that the kind of punk following that she had from the late 70s kind of went away?
I think they got overwhelmed by sort of regular music lovers, I think, you know.
The success of it.
Yeah.
Because was there some trepidation? I mean, Toyah has commented in the past about she wasn't sure about It's a Mystery when she first, obviously when you guys recorded it. Was that the case, like in the studio? Did she seem quite hesitant about the song because she felt it was too commercial?
No, because I mean, you know, we did 4 for that, you know, the 4 from Toyah EP. So there was War Boys, was it Angels and Demons?
Angels and Demons, Revelations.
That's right. Yeah. So I don't know. I think she was quite sort of interested in this sort of slight change, maybe. You know, I mean, we were later on, once we started doing the Anthem, and we were experimenting like mad. You know, I mean, Toyah would be the idea. What used to happen was when, obviously, those 4 tracks were like written when I joined, right? So it was almost like doing a session. Basically, you learn this, and you know, yeah, you do a little bit of input and stuff on it. But later on, when we were writing stuff, how we used to write was actually me, Adrian, Joel, and Phil would get together in a rehearsal room and just jam ideas someone had, and sort of embellish them a bit. Then they'd go to Toyah, you know, and then she'd sort of sort out which ones inspired her, so to speak.
Yeah. And of course, It's a Mystery, or 4 from Toyah, the EP got to number 4, I think it was, wasn't it? I Want to Be Free was 8. And then the track that you co-wrote as well as drummed on the, you know, with the band was Thunder in the Mountains. I mean, It was hit after hit, wasn't it? It was just relentless.
It was. I mean, someone's told me that's her biggest selling single. That
Thunder in the Mountains.
Yeah. Someone's told me that. Whether or not it is, I have no idea. But I remember the case of writing it, because me and Adrian, like, we were on the Anthem tour, and we were playing in Manchester, and we just suddenly thought, oh, let's take a synthesizer up to, you know, one of our rooms or something and just see if we can come up with something. And I think we took a bottle of brandy up with us. And the result was that, you know. And I remember turning around, because we were like sitting on the edge of a bed with this keyboard on, you know, like a sort of luggage rack thing that you normally get in a room, you know. So we were sitting on the bed, and I turned around, and Adrian was passed out flat on his back, you know, by the evening. But that's how Thunder started.
I would imagine that actually, yeah, going on tour with the band as well at that time, because it was such a high, I suppose, for all of you, because of the success as well, but also the music that you were making. It was an exciting time. And of course, the early 80s, very, very vibrant. I mean, visually too. And of course, Toyah, you know, she had that down to a T. But was it, I mean, was it quite an exciting time? What do you remember about touring and also playing in the studio as well? Did you think, you know, were you hoping that it was just going to last for a long time?
I must say, I mean, we sort of got a bit frustrated, because in the press, I mean, I personally did, because in the press, a lot of the time in the press, we were regarded as faceless session musicians, which I thought, hang on, no, this isn't it, because we're writing all the music.
Yeah.
You know, so that kind of sort of annoyed me, shall we say.
I was going to ask you about that, because obviously Toyah Willcox having the, you know, obviously being the front person of the band, and she got obviously all the interviews and everything else that came with it. Did that frustrate you as a band member? Because you're right, because I mean, the music is, you know, equally important, isn't it?
Yeah. It was just, I just got a bit fed up with us being sort of treated as faceless musicians. But, you know, I mean, we had a lot of fun during that time as well. You know, and the funny thing was, I mean, I was listening to all sorts of stuff, you know, musically, and I mean, I got Phil into Rush.
That's Phil Spalding, the bassist.
Yeah. And I got, you know, we're playing Rush, and I showed Joel, there was a little thing, because I was also really into like bands like Van Halen, and I showed him the finger tapping bit of Eddie's solo in Eruption. You know, so I played Joel, and he went, oh, that's interesting. So now we're all having a laugh, though. It was great.
And Nick Tauber producer, I suppose, because he had the rock background as well. And then synthesizers came in the early 80s, that sound, that pop sound.
Yeah. But no, I mean, when we were rehearsing and stuff, I mean, we were pretty loud and aggressive,
I'd love to have seen that. I'd love to have been a fly on the wall back then. There's only so much that's available, isn't there, on video? There's only so much footage. And of course, the Warrior Rock tour the year after you left the band, that wasn't even recorded. Well, not visually anyway. It was recorded for an album. But
I mean, we all had these white outfits that we wore. No, it was great. I mean, I had, because I was into bands like Rush and stuff. And so I'd had my drum kit up there. I had like tubular bells and all sorts going up there. I felt like Neil Peart, it's like, great,
And the mummy outfits as well.
Oh, yes, the mummy outfits. Yeah, that was hilarious.
That must have taken a while for that photo shoot. Did you have to just get wrapped up and were you left there or?
Yes, exactly. I think one of us needed a pee or something at one point. I think so they'd be carried into the
fun times.
Oh yeah, no, it was great. And if you see, we've got touches of gold paint on us as well in different parts of the face. So no, it was funny.
It's great because I suppose if you're in a band, not everybody signs up for that kind of thing. Not everybody signs up to be, I suppose, prominent. And some drummers or some members of the band, they just want to be kind of back at the stage. They don't necessarily want to be high profile, but but you seem to enjoy that.
Yeah, why not? This is something a bit different.
And some of the Pops as well. How were they?
That was you suddenly thought, God, we're on top of the Pops, and that was like. But when you actually got there to see it, it was like, oh.
A bit disappointing. I remember Robert Smith from The Cure saying, he'd always wanted to be on top of the Pops. He used to see David Bowie on top of the Pops and, Mark Bolan. And then when he got there, it was such an anticlimax because it was just such a tiny studio. It was like people being wheeled from corner to corner.
Move the audience round, It was like they were herding sheep. As I said, got there and we were excited about it because we hadn't done it before, but, just looking at it, it's like,
And what about Toyah At The Rainbow? Because this was recently reissued. I mean, this hasn't been released on DVD ever because it was on Laserdisc and VHS back in the good old days.
Yeah.
And now obviously it comes with lots of audio extra tracks as well because it's been released as a CD and DVD.
Yeah.
I mean, such an amazing gig. I was watching it the other night when I got this and when it came out on the release day, and it's so good to revisit because it's such a great gig. I mean, that was Finsbury Park, the Rainbow Theatre?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, obviously the Anthem tour came after that, so the gigs were bigger after that. We went up to Hammersmith for the London show.
Hammersmith Odeon.
Was 2 nights at Hammersmith, I think, that was great. It was finally like, because I used to travel up to see bands at Hammersmith and it was like, oh, I've arrived now, this is cool.
And Kate Bush obviously played there a few years back, 7 or 8 years ago. And that was an amazing show. Because that was the first venue that I went to as I was 12 when I saw Warrior Rock. And it was so great to see Kate Bush there, when she did those. Yeah, I used to
travel up from Brighton to go and see bands there, I mean, I saw Kiss's second ever show in the UK there.
Fantastic. Do you remember much about the Rainbow show? Because Toyah in the sleeve notes said she doesn't really remember much, which was a surprise because I thought she would have done. No,
I mean, I've sort of had images in my head. I can see sort of things, but I don't remember actually much. As she says, I don't actually remember that much about it. But it was like, whoa, this isn't, we'd heard about the Rainbow, obviously. So that was a big gig, so it was like, oh, great,
So what is it about during that time that you were with the band? What is it that sticks out the most? Is it writing and recording the tracks, or is it doing TV or?
Yeah, I mean, the TV thing at that time was like, there's not so many shows that do it now, but I mean, all this sort of playback thing. I mean, we had one, I can't even remember which one it was. Oh, there was one with, oh God, what was his name? Keith Chegwin.
Oh yeah, Cheggers Plays Pop.
That's it. Yeah, we did that. He took about, I don't know, about 8 goes to introduce us and kept getting it wrong. So again, and it was hilarious actually. No, he was a nice guy, but there was one actually, I can't remember which one it was, but our manager pulled it out because, you know, if you're doing playback, you've got to hear the track, and they just couldn't get it loud enough.
That must have been such a nightmare because
it was. I mean,
when you're a musician, you're quite perfectionist as well, aren't you? And if it all goes wrong, you've got to, you know, it comes back on you, doesn't it? I guess.
Yeah, and you know, it was like, I mean, you know, in the past, and you suddenly see things about bands on YouTube, you look at the drummer and they're not even playing the drums. Yeah. They're like, you know, for instance, like the sticking on the hi-hat, and it's about like 6 inches above the hat. You can see it's not being hit, but I like to get it as if I'm doing it. You know, so exactly. I tune all the drums down so they hardly made a sound at all anyway. I had fiberglass cymbals so I could hit those, you know, I mean, give them a good whack and all it would do would click. That was the only sound you got. But it looked as if I was playing it, you know, and I'd have to learn all the fills, you know, properly, so I put them in the right place. But it was like this one place, you couldn't hear a thing. As soon as I just started even tapping on the things, just went. In the end, our manager pulled us out, actually.
Was it a bit of a learning curve in that respect, that you kind of have to do things completely differently when you're doing TV?
Yeah. I mean, the playback thing, yeah, definitely, you know, because you've got to sort of look as if you are playing it, obviously, you know, and I do. I mean, even, you know, when Saxon have done playback in the past, I mean, I'm playing. You know, we have like, if we do a thing like that, it's got to be up loud.
When a vocalist lip syncing or miming, people just think, you know, some can get it spot on, but people don't really think about musicians so much, I don't think, unless you're a musician, obviously, because you're fine tuned to that. Yeah.
I mean,
it must be very difficult.
The interesting thing about Top of the Pops was, though, was that, you know, the Musicians Union, you had to re-record the song. So you didn't just play back to the single that you'd released. You had to go back in the studio and re-record it. Oh yeah,
because it's a mystery. That's why there's an extra track, isn't there, on the re-release? In the TV version.
Right. Yeah. That's it. Because the MU would send people round to whoever. Well, they didn't send around to everyone, but it was like, you know, you had to be prepared that you would get it almost like raided in the studio, so they could check that you were actually the people playing on it. That's what it was.
Oh, right. So did you have to record that there and then before the show, or did you have to do it in advance? Oh, right. On the same day?
No, not on the same day. Probably 3 days beforehand.
Oh, right.
And you had to go in because you never knew if you know, sometimes I think people went, oh, sod it, we're not going to do it. But you never knew if you were going to be raided. You never knew.
So what a pain in the arse.
Exactly. Yeah, totally. But you had to do it because you could get raided.
Yeah. Wow. Different times, I guess, now.
Yeah.
And I suppose we don't really have Top of the Pops anymore as well, which, I mean, I think is a real shame, but they've just axed the Christmas one.
I totally agree. But there was a period during the Top of the Pops, actually, when the vocalist had to sing live. So the rest of the band were miming, but the vocals had to be live.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, but then the next minute it wasn't, you know, it was just, oh.
So are you still in touch with the guys? Are you still in touch with Toyah and Adrian, Phil Spalding, Joel as well?
Yeah, all of them. Yeah. I mean, I'm probably most in touch with Adrian, you know, but no, I mean, Toyah and I keep in touch, you know, every month. We're sort of in touch and everything, and Joel and Phil, but I'm probably most of all, I'm in touch with Adrian.
That's great. That's really good to hear, because I suppose, you know, it was such a long time ago and things do change and people change. They move on and do other things. It's really nice to have, you know, obviously that you're still connected.
Yeah, I mean, Adrian for a time was living in the US, and I hadn't seen him for quite a few years, actually. And I don't know, out of the blue, we sort of contacted each other, and it was great because, you know, in Anaheim, California, there's a big sort of music trade show, which is, you know, and which is the NAMM show, where all the music manufacturers bring their stuff, and I go there for my endorsers and stuff. And I was just in there, and I suddenly saw Adrian walking towards me on his phone, and I just went up to him and went, boo.
What was his response?
Yeah, oh, it was like, whoa, you know, it's great. So
so how do you feel about these reissues? It must be great for you to to see that these are getting introduced to a new audience as well, because I suppose there's a younger audience that didn't necessarily, know of these albums before.
No, that's right.
At the time, obviously, some people weren't even around back then.
No, that's right, definitely. So, it's obviously by the fact that it's charted, and done really well. Obviously, there's more people there, which is great, But I love sort of some of the. There's a track on, I can't remember which one it was, but it was only on a floppy disk that you got with, I don't know, Melody Maker or something.
Oh yeah, was that Sphinx? There was two, wasn't there? There was Stand Proud, the black flexi disc, and
have them, because obviously I've still got the floppy, but it probably wears out after 3 plays.
Yeah. I remember having to put a coin on top of the needle because the needle kept jumping off the flexi disc.
Yeah, that's it.
Nightmare.
But that was great when they used to do that. So it's brilliant to see that. And I must admit, I haven't looked through everything that's on there. So, but I'm sure there's some stuff on there that I haven't heard for yonks.
Yeah, and they're lovingly repackaged as well. Obviously, Craig Astley's done such an amazing job with these. And
really good.
I think it's great because I think it's long overdue in a way that they should have been, but worth waiting for equally. Do you have a favorite track or a favorite maybe session that you were part of that comes to mind?
No, the whole Anthem session was great. I remember at one point we were doing Popstar. And I think it was just me, Adrian, and Nick Tauber and the engineer in the studio about 2:00 in the morning. And we were just playing around with stuff. And it was, we were drinking coffee like God knows what to keep us awake, But I remember the big sort of deep drum sound you hear on Popstar is like we sped the track up and I just took my kick drum away from the kit and just sort of took any dampening out and just hit it with a big timpani thing. So when the track slowed down, it was like really deep, So we were just experimenting like that. And the other one was Obsolete, because Obsolete's just me and Joel.
Yeah.
There's no bass on it or keyboards.
It's very drum heavy, isn't it? And I think a lot of the tracks that, Toyah released in that year were, and I think they've got your stamp all over them because they sound very, very energetic, and obviously drums is very prominent in that sound, as well as synthesizers. But I think the drums come across. Yeah,
but I was constantly trying to come up with different sort of odd rhythms, shall we say? I was listening to stuff like Ultravox and Japan, Susie and the Banshees, all that, and all that kind of stuff, trying to get different, feeding stuff off these guys, thinking, well, that sounds interesting. What if I change that round, So it's like constant learning curve.
Yeah, that's my record collection, that is.
Brilliant.
It's a man after my own heart. So are you watching what Toyah's doing at the moment with, she's obviously filming a lot of stuff at home with Robert Fripp, her husband. There's
Sunday lunch.
Sunday lunch and Toyah at home.
I want to know who that other guitarist is with the mask on.
I know, right? I still don't know. I have no idea who that is.
That one.
Do you think it's somebody really well known? Because I guess it must be. He lives nearby, doesn't he?
I've no idea. No idea at all. There's just some third person. He's wearing one of those sort of masks like the band Ghost wore,
She's done incredibly well.
Oh yeah, no, they're a good laugh. I think it's great. I think the way she makes Robert up and giving him a Mohican and all this stuff, I think it's hilarious.
So you continue to be, really successful with Saxon. You've been touring, haven't you, recently? A few months back?
I've literally just been back for about a week.
Oh wow! So you've been playing what, worldwide or just in this country?
No, the most recent thing we did a full UK. We did a European tour. And then we've done a UK tour, and I think the last gig was last Saturday.
Oh wow! And it was your 40th anniversary, wasn't it, with Saxon? Because that was last year.
No, that was the year before. I think
before.
Actually, my 40th anniversary. Yeah. But it wasn't the band's because it was the band's 42nd,
right?
Or something like that. But yeah, because we had we had shows like 40th anniversary shows like rescheduled because of the pandemic and stuff.
Yeah.
But no, we just played the Roundhouse last Saturday, I think it was.
Fantastic.
Yeah, so we're just on a break, and we've got 2 shows. Got a show in Paris on Friday, and then one in Germany on the Saturday, and then I go home. So that'll be.
Oh, fantastic. Listen, we'll stick all the information down below, like where they can find your music and stuff. We'll put it
great.
in the YouTube description. Nigel, it's been so great to chat to you. Look after yourself, and thank you so much again for your time.
Anytime. You've got my email now, so anytime you want to chat, feel free.